Hey there, welcome. Thank you guys so much for being here today. My name is Felicia from Sweet Georgia and also the School of Sweet Georgia. This is going to be our live stream for our live office hours that we do once a month for the School of Sweet Georgia. And now, if you haven't heard about the School of Sweet Georgia, the School of Sweet Georgia is our online learning space where we are learning all about the different fiber arts, everything from knitting and spinning, weaving, dyeing, fiber prep, all of the things. And we're going to talk about so many of those things today. We have lots and lots of things to share. We usually do these calls once a month, but last month we skipped last month because of spring break. And so now we are catching up, and there's lots and lots of things to share with you today in the call. So I'm very, very excited about that. Thank you guys so much for being here in the chat. I can see you guys. Wonderful. I see Nina and Kathy and Brenda and Karen and Elena. Thank you guys so much for being here. Chronically interabled. Thank you. Thank you. So I have a bunch of slides here that I'm going to share with you. And we're going to talk about all of the things that are going on inside the School of Sweet Georgia and what you guys have been making as well. This is going to be catching up from lots of things that have been happening over the past couple of weeks. So here you can see, ta-da, this is our little agenda for today. You can see sort of what we're going to be talking about. Generally, I'll talk a little bit about sort of what's top of mind, what's going on right now that I'm interested in and that we're doing and things like that. And then also have some of the updates that are coming soon for the school, new courses that we have coming out, new content that we're having. You can see from this little photo here, this is a preview of one of the courses that's going to be coming out very, very shortly. And we'll talk about all of those things. Fantastic. Oh, hi, Pearl. You're here too. Wonderful. Thanks for being here. So let's go first to what is top of mind. And I think that the first thing that I wanted to share with you, we didn't really get a chance to share this earlier, but the first thing is that the new Weft Magazine has launched. Now, if you have not yet heard about this magazine, it is by JC Boggs Faulkner, who was also the founder of Ply Magazine. And so JC worked with another weaver instructor, Lisa Graves from Ontario. And the two of them partnered up and paired together to create this new magazine called Weft Magazine. So it's a weaving dedicated magazine. And this is something new that is being brought into our sort of weaving community here. So Weft Magazine is this independent magazine that is going to be all about going really super in-depth with weaving content. And for this first issue that's come out, it's all about plain weave. There's a number of articles by many people that you will recognize, but I got to write one of the articles that's in there. So I wrote the article about weaving plain weave, but in a double weave format. So using plain weave to weave basically double width. And there's a whole article about that and how it all works and showing all sorts of different weave structures and like the drafts to do it and the different tie-ups and all these kinds of things. All of that is in the article. So if you have a copy of this magazine, you can check that out. There's also a digital copy. You can also get a print copy. So this is going to be an amazing resource. I just got my own copy of this magazine recently, and it is huge. Like the magazine is full of content. So it's a really, really great thing to see happen. Now, if you are in the school and if you have been in the school for a while, we did release a course previously about weaving double width or double weave. And so I made a blanket project as part of that. So if you wanted to learn how to weave double weave, all of the content is already inside the school. And so you could absolutely check that out and learn all of that. Now, as part of this first magazine, not just writing the article about double weave, but I also got the chance to contribute a design for the magazine. And so these are the photos of the blanket that Weft Magazine took for me. So I believe that's JC's son playing on his Nintendo there with the blanket. It's meant to be like a lap blanket. You can sort of cozy up on the couch with it, watch TV under it, all that kind of stuff. But this is a double width, double weave blanket that was woven in our Sweet Georgia BFL and Silk DK yarn. It's a DK weight yarn. It was meant to be like a little bit heavier weight so that it would be quick and easy to weave. And so you can see those are the photos that are published in the actual magazine. Now, before I sent the blanket off, because I don't actually have the blanket anymore, the blanket project is with Weft Magazine now. But before I sent off the blanket in the mail, I also took a few photos because I wanted to share some photos, sneak preview kind of photos. But this is photos of the blanket at the studio, and so you can see kind of like the colors that are in this blanket, and a lot of the design and the stripes, they're meant to be super, super minimal, which is why I called it the minimalist blanket. The idea is really like you're playing with this palette of colors. Some of these colors that I chose in here were to go with the color theme that was given as part of the magazine. So with each one of these magazine issues, JC and Lisa pulled together a color palette and say, we would like all the projects to kind of be in and around these sorts of colors. And so those colors had some greens, had some browns, had some sort of turquoisey kind of blues in them. And so I pulled all those colors together from our Sweet Georgia palette to create something that would kind of fit in with their color theme. So these may or may not be sort of colors that you would choose off the bat, but that's part of the beauty of this pattern is that there's 4 colors and you can mix and match and choose whichever colors you like. Now, in order to design this sort of plaid, it's actually, if you follow the plaid and tartan class that we released a couple of months ago, that plaid and tartan class, I talked about a website called plaidmaker.com. And so if you go on plaidmaker.com, you can enter a bit, some colors and some numbers, and it starts to put together a mock up of what it would look like if you were going to weave a plaid. And so I started to use Plaidmaker and experiment with like different ways of making these stripes. Um, JC also wanted me to sort of collaborate with Tien Shu. So Tien it also runs a weaving online school and has been weaving for many, many years, has written lots and lots about weaving as well. So Tien wrote an article about designing stripes in plain weave for that same issue, for the plain weave issue of Weft Magazine. And so I read her article and they wanted me to kind of like riff off of Tien's ideas, her design concepts, and kind of use some of those design concepts in designing this blanket. And so that's kind of where a lot of it comes from, is this idea of like playing with repetition, playing with scale, playing with asymmetry. So this blanket, when you open up the design, it's actually an asymmetrical design. But I basically looked at plaidmaker.com, played with a bunch of different stripe patterns, and then really zoomed in to one section of the design and kind of cut out all of the repeats and all this kind of stuff and just kind of go almost like with a microscope and focus on one small part of the whole entire design. And that's where this color block design came from. So those are some of my photos of this. I wanted to weave a second blanket. And so what I did was after I finished this blanket, I left all of the ends on the loom still. And then I basically tied on another warp to the same loom, same project, same everything. And so this is what is currently on my loom. You can see these big sort of dark stripes across the middle. Those are not like, that's not part of the dye job. That's actually just shadows from the setting sun in the attic. So in the attic around like starting around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I guess it's west facing. So all of the sun starts to go down and then cast these very long shadows. So these are all very long shadows across the width of the loom. But this is basically the project. So there's some darker pink on this side and then a bit of lighter pink. And then this is kind of like a brownie beige kind of color, and then on the back side we'll have like a lighter color as well. So yeah, making a second blanket for myself for my house. And so you can see this is all sort of like the ends of the warp that have been tied on, and a little bit of an up close look at the texture of what that looks like. This is again that Blueface Leicester and silk DK weight yarn. Now again, I'll show you as a reference. This is the blanket that we made inside the school of Sweet Georgia. This is the cabin blanket. And so this is again made with BFL and silk, but we used a fingering weight here. So it was a little bit finer. And so you can see sort of like the drape of this blanket with the finer weight yarn is a little bit more light. It's a little bit more drapey. It's definitely a thinner blanket. So you can really decide like if you like a thinner blanket, if you like a thicker blanket, how you want that texture to feel. I encourage you to take a look at that plaids and tartans class that we sort of put together. It's stripes, plaids, and tartans, and look at, how do you design your own plaid, stripes, and tartans? How do you create your own stripe pattern? How do you create your own color combination? And then use that information and then translate it onto the loom to make a double weave project. And you can basically take whatever plaid pattern you've created and reflect it. You can repeat it across, you can do whatever you want with it, but it's a really lovely way of working with a small select color palette, and then stripes, plain weave, and then learn how to weave double weave on your loom. If you guys have any questions about double weave, I am more than happy to answer. I'm actually really, really fond of this particular way of weaving, and it's become really, really quick and easy and fast. And since the time that I wove this blanket, I've learned many new things as well, which have made the process so much easier as well. So yeah, if you guys are interested in learning about double weave, we do have all of that content in the school that you guys can check out. Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, let's go on to inside of the school. So, one of the very first things that I wanted to share with you guys is this is the new class that is going to be coming out very, very soon. We have sort of like mentioned it a couple of times because we did a bit of a pre-sale for some of these fibers that are included in here, but this class is going to be about spinning bast fibers with Kim McKenna. So Kim has taught many of our spinning classes inside the School of Sweet Georgia, and her spinning, you can look at this yarn. It's absolutely gorgeous. Everything about her yarn, like if you could touch it and feel it, it's always soft but structurally sound and delicate and light and airy and just full of life. And it's really, really beautiful yarn. Greta is on the call here. She can attest to, like, Kim's handspun yarn is really truly beautiful. And so in this particular class, Kim shows how to combine things like bast fibers. Those are things like ramie, like flax, hemp, and she's also spinning with nettle, Himalayan nettle. So these are all plant-based fibers. And how do you spin them? What is the texture of them? What's the nature of them? How do you work with them? How do you blend them with other wool fibers and things like that? And sort of she'll also talk about how to process these fast fibers. We have a number of people locally who have sort of gone through the entire process from growing your own flax, like growing these plants, growing the flax, and then, taking them out and then retting them and processing them so that you can actually spin them into yarn and then make them into textiles. It's quite a process, but you can sort of shortcut the process by sort of jumping in with already sort of prepared flax fiber, and then you can just start to blend that into your projects. So yeah, you can see some of these samples that she's created are really, really beautiful because these are dyed fibers, dyed wool fibers mixed with undyed plant fibers. But if you also did blend together your plant fibers and your protein wool fibers, and then you dyed them afterwards, they would take on dye in a very different way because the dyes that we use for wool, they don't attach to cellulose fibers or plant fibers. And so your final yarn will look very different. It will look very, very unique and heathered and just have a lot of texture and a lot of character to them. So these yarns are absolutely gorgeous. And you can see sort of how they have been blended. So this bottom one has been blended with a bit of hemp. This middle one has been blended with some ramie and some nettle here. Yeah, so these are all sorts of samples from what you might learn with Kim in her next class. Now, if you are sort of getting into the process of wanting to learn how to spin some of these cellulose fibers, some of these bast fibers, then we do recommend a couple of classes, if you haven't done them already, to sort of check out Spinning Up a Level. Spinning Up a Level is a class with Katrina Stewart. And that one, it really goes through all the different methods of, drafting and repairing your fiber. And there's lots and lots of skills in that. And that's one that we encourage everybody to sort of like work through all of the exercises in that particular class. And then the other class that we encourage you to check out is one that's called Nuances of Spinning Better Yarns. And that is also with Kim McKenna. And in that one, Kim goes through a lot of very, well, very nuanced details of how she spins. And that particular class did improve my own spinning a lot. There's a lot of things to consider, just small things to think about as you're spinning. But these small changes can make really vast improvements to the consistency of your yarn and how it's finished and all of these kinds of things. So these classes will give you a good foundation for moving on into future spinning classes as well. So that is a little bit of that. Now, people had been asking in the forums about where they can buy some of this fiber. So what we did in preparation for the release of this class is to prepare these kits, some of these kits, as pre-orders for the bast fibers, because we don't carry the bast fibers like on a regular basis inside the studio here. You can probably find them online, maybe the Woolery, maybe Etsy, things like that, where you want to find individual types of fibers. But in our kit, we sort of put together all of the fibers that Kim was demonstrating with. So that way you would have a full set to work from. And so what we're planning to do is probably put out some kind of a pre-order like this sort of once a year, or maybe if there's enough interest, maybe we do another one later on this year. But we order all of that bast fiber in bulk and then split it up into all of the different kits. So it's not something that we can just kind of like have ongoing. But yeah, oh yes, and World of Wool, of course. World of Wool sells all of that fiber as well. So yeah, interested to see what you guys think about all of that when it comes out. Now, the next one I wanted to share with you is, again, ice dyeing with fiber reactive dyes. This one just came out with Katrina Stewart. And this one I always encourage people to try, especially because now it is actually getting warmer outside and it's getting sunnier outside. At least it is here in Vancouver. And this is actually the perfect thing to do outside. So you can do a lot of your dyeing in a tray with a tray of ice, your substrate underneath. So you're dyeing fiber or fabric or yarn. You can pre-wind warps and put your warps in and then dye them in this way. And it's a really great method because you don't have to be in a pot like mushing yarn around where the yarn can get very tangled. You don't have to be uh, adding any heat. So there's no heating elements required. There's no electricity required. There's no like you don't have to find a cooker tool that you can use outside like a I'm thinking about a crawfish cooker, a gas-fired crawfish cooker. You don't have to get anything like that. There's no gear to think about. It's really just this tray, your fiber, and then some ice, and then your dyes, and then some chemicals. So this is a great way to be dyeing, very easy, hands-off way to be dyeing in the summertime. And so we actually have some members who have started using this technique, and so I'll show that to you guys in the Share Your Win section later. But yeah, give that a try if you have not yet done that. Now, the other class that came out recently is the TwoHedle Twills on Rigid Heddle Looms class with Amanda Wood. And so you can see in that class, she teaches how to weave a twill fabric. It's a different weave structure, but done on a rigid heddle loom. And so you can see here, there's the two heddles on the loom. She's using a little Ashford samplet loom. And the scarf is actually really, really lovely, the one that she's designed here. It's made with flaxen silk fine. You can see it's almost like a two-faced fabric. One side looks a little bit darker, one side looks a little bit lighter, depending on what colors you use. And so it's, yeah, a two-sided fabric with this kind of twill pattern. And so that could really expand your repertoire if you have not yet tried other things on your rigid heddle loom, or you have one sitting there and you want to make something with it. This is a nice project to try. Also, Amanda came and visited us last week on the SOS Weavers meeting call. So on Monday evenings, once a month, we do a Weavers call. And she came to join us on that. And, we talked about looms and we talked about lots of different ideas. Amanda is a wonderful weaver and artist. And I do encourage you to follow all the things that she's been working on. She's just beautiful, beautiful work. This is a little sneak preview of another course that we have coming out very soon. And this is about knitting a stranded color work sweater from the top down. And so this one is with Caitlin Shepherd. Caitlin has actually come and taught a number of colorwork classes with us already on the school. And so if you remember last year, she did the mitts with the antlers on them. Very, very cute. I love this motif. But she did some mitts with us. So we are doing lots of color work stuff with Caitlin, and excited to share this particular sweater pattern. It looks really, well, I think it looks very holiday-like because you've got the antlers there, and then you've got these diamonds that look a little bit like ornaments or like little stars. And so I think that summer is a great time to start knitting a winter or holiday sweater if that's what you're thinking about doing. If you're thinking about having a holiday sweater, I feel like the best time to start knitting it is probably summertime so that it will be ready for holiday time. And so, yes, this will be coming out shortly if anybody wants to join us in making this sweater as well. You can think about all the different color combinations you could do for this. And we do have a number of colorwork knitting classes in the school already if you wanted to have a look at those too. Some of them are taught by Andrea as well, looking at different color palettes and how you swatch for color work and all sorts of things like that. We've done quite a lot of color work in the past couple of years. And then just a quick highlight of the class that came out earlier this year, which was about weaving stripes, plaids, and tartans. And we're going to use this information more and more in the coming months because we're going to be doing some more kits around these. I'm going to show you the yarn that I wove these scarves with is actually this yarn called Knoll. It's from a place called Knoll, and it's merino lamb's wool. It is beautiful yarn and it works up beautifully in weaving. We're going to try knitting with some of it as well. It's thin, so you can hold it multi-stranded together if you want for other projects. But we liked it so much, we brought it in like 15 more colors. So we're just in the middle of winding them onto cones to make them really nice and pretty. And then we're going to take photos of them so we can share them with you. But we have started using some of these colors to create new palettes for other projects coming up in the coming months. And as well, Greta has been doing the hard work of taking some of these colors that we picked and matching them up with colors that we have in the Sweet Georgia palette. So she's sort of matched up, like what is this red color, or what does that match in our particular colorways, the Sweet Georgia colorways, and what is this color? And so then we can also translate those into, say, like using Tough Love Sock or using Trifecta or using BFL and Silk Fine in another weaving project. So we're looking at definitely creating more palettes for weaving projects and things like that. Um, Greta is saying that the pattern comes out in June. And I think you're talking about the pattern that comes out for the top down sweater, the top down colorwork sweater. Correct? Correct. Yes. The sweater pattern. Yes. Yes. So yes, Knoll yarns will be up on the website as soon as we can get them up because they're so, so pretty. You should see the palette. I have a snapshot of the palette that I took, and maybe I'll share that somewhere. But yeah, it was really, really fun to pick all those colors. Now, let's just quickly go to upcoming events. So, very, very quickly, in a few short days, it seems like, Teresa and Charlotte and myself from Sweet Georgia are going to be going to Chicago or Rosemont near Chicago for H&H America. So that is like a view of our booth from last year. We're going to be there in the same spot, same place. If you are in and around that sort of Chicago area and you would like to attend H&H, you can get a free ticket to go into the expo. And so you can get access to all the keynotes, the main stage sessions. I'm actually going to be hosting, I'm going to be moderating a discussion panel on the main stage. And it's going to be all about membership sites. So I'm actually going to be talking to Anne Marrow from Fibre and Farm Knits. She's also from Long Thread Media. And also Heather Liu from Closet Core Patterns is going to be there as well. And then Jenny Drew from So Confident. So the four of us are going to be doing a panel conversation about memberships and learning sort of communities and things like that. And so that I'm really, really looking forward to. That's going to be on the Friday of H&H. And there's a number of different special events and things like that too. So if you are in any way sort of like wanting to see what it looks like on the inside of sort of a yarn trade show, I encourage you to come and check that out. So you can see there's a registration link there if you want to come and see what that's all about. The other thing I want to give you like a heads up about is that Knit City in Vancouver is happening again. It did not happen last year, but it will be happening this coming year and in September. And so we're going to have more details coming about that soon, but that is going to be the September 26th to 28th weekend at the PNE in Vancouver. And you can find more details on the Knit Social website there as well. But that is our booth from 2 years ago. And so we'll probably have a big booth like that again this coming year. And we're going to do lots of things. We're going to do lots of demos. We want to do sort of like a CSM crank in. We want to bring some knitting machines. We want to bring some wheels and looms and just do all the things that we normally do every time we do Knit City. It's basically like outreach and showing what everybody, what all these fiber arts are. So a lot of people will come to Knit City and be have have been exposed to knitting or crochet. Like they might know how to do one or two of these crafts, but they might not have ever seen a loom. They might not have ever seen a spinning wheel. And so sometimes seeing it just for the first time, seeing how it works, can spark that interest in just kind of like plant a seed of maybe you want to try this someday, maybe. So that is what our calendar looks like for May 2025. Um, you can see in the blue, those are all sort of the events that are happening outside of Vancouver, or no, outside of the studio. So they're kind of in-person events. So the H&H is an in-person event, and then we have a Knit at Noon, which happens at our Sweet Georgia studio in Vancouver, and that always happens. Yeah, at our studio. And then we have our Sunday Crafternoons that have been happening, that have been hosted by Pearl and some of the other people here on the chat here, some of our members. And then we have Crafternoons with Robin. So on 2 of the Mondays in the morning time. And then in the evenings, we have a weaving meeting that's hosted by me and a fiber prep meeting that is hosted by Greta. And so those two are happening as well. And then we also have some sort of topic focused meetings that continue to happen on Wednesdays. So there's one where people were talking about inkle weaving. So anybody who's interested in talking about inkle weaving might also talk about that. And there's also one for tapestry weaving. And then finally, the Friday co-working session, the quiet co-working session, is continuing to go on. And basically the whole idea there is that you come for that time period and everybody turns themselves on mute, and then everybody's working away at the projects that they're working on. And it's actually a really good time to be super, super productive with anything that you happen to have to make progress on. Just merely having people there in a Zoom room next to you actually psychologically gets you to do things. So it's a great thing, and I'm really glad that it is continuing to live on in this way. We also have our Taking Back Friday live stream session. Normally, we do it on the second Friday of every month, but because we're away at H&H, I just moved it to the 16th. And so on that day, I'm going to be doing a live stream and sharing some of the stuff that we learned and discovered and saw at H&H. So hopefully you guys will join us for that. And then again, we have live office hours on the last Thursday of every month. Now, normally we would have also a multi-craft tool meetup for everybody in our community. It's like open to the public and everything. It's usually on a Monday, multi-craft tool Monday. But because this month is all packed full of stuff, like we are away, we have weaving meetings, and then May the 19th is a stat holiday in Canada. So we're going to skip that meeting for May and then hopefully continue on in June with that. So that is that month. Then I have here weaving meetings. Yes. So on the weaving meetings, we always try to come and talk about weaving questions, anything that you happen to be making or working on or things like that. And in the last one, if you go back and you watch the archive, Amanda Wood did join us for that one to answer questions. So you can have that, check that one out. And then every month, we also have the fiber prep meeting with Greta. And so she talks about, she's been talking about Rolag, she's been talking about fiber prep. She has been spinning so much. And so if you follow some of the work in the forum, some of the posts in the forums, Greta has been posting a ton, and she makes great notes, and she has like little cards and she writes notes on them. And she keeps samples and swatches. Like, it's very, very inspiring to watch Greta and her process for how she gets just does all the spinning. That's very prolific spinning, lots and lots of spinning, but also very, very good notes about everything that she has been spinning. And so, yes, I do encourage you to check out all of those recordings. So Greta's posted a link to the meeting recordings in the chat here for us. Now, one thing I just wanted to remind you guys about, if you didn't know, we do have these new sort of membership offerings. So we have created a spinning only sort of membership, a weaving only membership, and a knitting and crochet only membership. And so this is like, if you're thinking about wanting to focus on one particular area this year, then you can just subscribe to this one area of the school, because we do understand that we have like 115 classes now, and then there's still more coming, and it can be difficult to try to absorb 115 different courses. And so you feel like, oh, if you want to just focus on one thing at a time, and one craft at a time, this is a good way to do it. And like we've talked about before, we're coming out with also machine knitting classes later on this year. And so the machine knitting classes will automatically go into the knitting and crochet section as well. And of course, if you are signed up for the all access, you get access to everything at all times, and you'll be able to pick and choose whatever it is that you like to do and focus on. Now, community, very quickly, just to remind you guys that if you go to schoolofsweetgeorgia.com/community, this is where the SOS forum lives. And so this is where all these very deep conversations are going on about questions, about things that people are learning, things that people are sharing. So what I'm going to be sharing next in the Share Your Wins section of this call is very much things that people have shared about things that they have made. And so this is where a lot of the learning happens. We always say that the community and the content are like two halves of the same whole in the school. The school is not just classes. The school is classes and the community. And so having all of this conversation on all these discussions, this is where a lot of the learning is actually happening. So I do encourage you to check that out if you haven't poked your head in there yet. Now, I actually got a lot of questions this month in the Q&A. So one of the first things is from Tamia asking about blending boards. And so she was saying, hello, I am a new member and exploring the courses and going down the rabbit hole that is fiber and spinning. I'm greatly inspired by Felicia's recent fiber prep videos and was wondering if there was a great place to start with fiber preparation for spinning, as all courses I've checked out start with that. But have you thought of a specific course for that? I've ordered the blending board book and a blending board. Can't wait to dive into that. There's a lot to take in here at the school, so I'm sorry if I've missed the very obvious course on fiber prep or something. So the first thing is that we actually have quite a number of classes about fiber prep. In fact, I think that we even created a section or like a category on the school just for fiber prep. We might have removed it, but I'm thinking that we did at some point in time. But we have a number of classes on fiber prep. Some of the first classes that I would encourage you to check out would be with Diana Twist. Diana Twist has shown how to work with blending boards, how to use hand cards, how to use hackles, how to use combs. And so in her color and fiber play classes, she does a lot of fiber prep. The other person that does a lot of fiber prep is Kim McKenna. Also uses blending boards to prepare fiber for both woolen and worsted spinning. So there's a lot of different places to go for fiber prep information. There's also the very first fiber prep video course that we made was with Katrina Stewart, and it was called Carding for Color. And so in that one, Katrina also shows how to use a drum carder and blending different colors together to create blends of colors. So playing with colors and fiber and drum carder. So there's lots of different places, but I think that if you started with a blending board, then I might check out Diana Twist's classes first. Check out the book that Debbie Held has written. And as well, I mean, we made a couple of videos about all of that stuff about fiber prep during what we're calling Fiber Prep February. So you can find those as well. Yeah. And then Tamia also has another question here, a follow up question. And it was about wondering what you thought about the sentiment that most people are either into the preparation of the fiber more or more into the spinning, or at least leaning towards one on that spectrum. Thank you for all the inspiration and the work that you do. So, yeah, I think that everybody who is making things will find themselves at different places on the spectrum of what they like to make and what they like to do. And so you can go into something like a craft like spinning, which is, transforming that fiber and turning it into yarn. And you can enjoy all sorts of different aspects of that process. I mean, there's going to be people who like spinning worsted. There's going to be people who like spinning lace weight, or people who like spinning woolen, or people who want to spin thick and chunky. All of this stuff is about like how it feels in your hands and how you enjoy the process. And so I find that there are some people who will like the feeling of the fiber and playing with the fiber and watching the colors mix and blend together even before it becomes yarn. And so that's where fiber prep is becoming its own craft almost. You can just dive deep into just making bats or making rollags. That part of it can absolutely be obsessively fun for somebody. And then it becomes like spinning is its own other thing. Like actually spinning it into yarn is one thing, but the fiber prep is also one thing. So it's almost like enjoying two crafts. They're all along the same spectrum because there's other parts of that whole spectrum, right? If you want to also learn to dye your own fiber, or you want to learn to wash your own fleece, your own raw wool, transform that into something that could be then dyed, that could be then processed, that could be then blended. We provide all of this information because this entire spectrum of transforming fiber to yarn to fabric is so broad, and there's so many things to enjoy in that whole process. And so we don't want to just serve one small chunk of the process. We're really like here to appreciate the entire process, and we want to be able to support everybody who wants to do all the things. But yeah, I think that you will definitely find some people lean more to this, some people gravitate more to that. I talked to one of our instructors had said something before about how they weren't processing raw wool or something, raw fleece, because they're just like, there's just not enough time to do all the things. So at the end of the day, when you discover that you only have so much time and so much energy and so much focus and so many resources, you do start to narrow down into like one aspect of the spectrum. I can absolutely see that. But yeah, I do encourage everybody to try all the things first. Yes, prepping the raw fleece. Yes. We have that drum carder class, the carding for color class, but a drum carder specific course could be really, really interesting, like only using a drum carder. We have a bunch of drum carders to pick from. We have a coarse one, we have a regular fine one, we have a motorized one. So there could be definitely something there that we could talk about as well. The next question is about glazing with dyes. And so this one is from Aline. It was posted in the forums. And so this is a photo of some pumpkin orange colored yarn that she dyed. And she said, I dyed some wool yarn superwash with acid dyes, and it took the dye so well that it turned out brighter and more intense than I had intended. So I have one skein of pumpkin colored yarn that I'd like to glaze, maybe with some brown or maybe with some dark red. I've never glazed anything, so I'm looking for tips. How do you choose your colors for glazing, and what is your process? And so this one, I'm not really going to answer here just because the answer is in the discussion forum and it's super, super, super well done. It is by Charlotte from the studio here. And so she gave some ideas about like, if you started with pumpkin orange, what would that look like if you were to kind of dye it with a thin layer of brown? What would it look like if you dyed it with a thin layer of red? And then what would it look like if you dyed it with a thin layer of green or purple or whatever it is? And so there's a number of different examples of what might happen to convert this very intense orange colored yarn and transform it into something a little bit different. And so glazing is just a nice way of saying dyeing colors in multiple layers on the same yarn. So you guys can check that out. I do encourage you guys to check out the post. It's very detailed and it was good. So thank you, Charlotte. There was another question today. It came in this morning from Cindy and asking about storage bobbins. And so you can see here, she's saying, I have been spinning for a couple of years. How do you use a storage bobbin? I've heard about it, but I don't know how to put the fiber spun from the bobbin onto a storage bobbin or even where to buy them. I use support spindles, an e-spinner, and a couple of wheels. So yes, you can see here, I just put a photo here of my matchless bobbin. So this is like a wooden bobbin that comes with my spinning wheel, and this is what I spin onto. But the process of moving the yarn from the wheel bobbin onto a storage bobbin is something that has just become like part of my spinning routine now. And we talked about that, I believe, in the class with Katrina Stewart. The first time that we talked about it, I think, was with Katrina's class called Spinning Up a Level. And it was about taking your yarn, moving it to storage bobbins, and then plying through the rings. So all of those kinds of things. But the idea is that you take the yarn on your wheel bobbin and you put it on your lazy Kate, and then you take the yarn that has been spun and then you move it to a storage bobbin, either by using a bobbin winder or actually, yeah, using a bobbin winder. Um, so you can get a manual hand cranked bobbin winder. Shack sells these things. We use some photos of those, but it's a manual single ended hand cranked bobbin winder. That's one way to do it. I use a double-ended electric bobbin winder because that's what I have, and it's actually really, really fast. So I have one actually here right beside me on the shelf here. This one is the Leclerc one, but I have another one that I bought like so many years ago off eBay. Somebody basically had just made it, um, but it holds your storage bobbin. I have one here. Let's see if I can show you. This is what the storage bobbin looks like. This one is just a cardboard one. And so you can buy these in bulk, these storage bobbins, and they're really lightweight. And the reason why we get these storage bobbins is because they are way less expensive. Um, these are easier to have around, way less expensive to have around than having a ton of wooden bobbins for your wheel. The wooden bobbins can be very, very expensive. So I basically put this onto my double-ended bobbin winder and then move the yarn from my wheel bobbin to this bobbin. And then it allows also the twist to sort of even out a little bit as well, and then move all the plies to here, and then ply from these bobbins onto the next wheel bobbin. So yes, you can order these from us. You can find them online. They're cardboard storage bobbins, and you can do this with your support spindles as well. You know, just transferring it, put this on your bobbin winder and transfer your yarn onto here. You do it with your e-spinner, you have your couple of wheels, you can do this manually. There's another video where Rachel Smith also shows how she converted a drill, like an electric handheld drill, and she converted that into a bobbin winder. So you can put the drill bit in here, and then it will basically turn your bobbin and then pull the yarn onto here. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, but rewinding onto storage bobbins is something that's just become absolute habit for me, and I think that it makes a difference in how your yarn turns out. I do like it. Yes, Greta has a link here to rewinding singles. So maybe you can check that one out. But thank you for the question. And we have one other question that came in from Lauren. And so I'll show you her actual sweater a little bit later because it comes up in our Share Your Win section. But she was asking about sort of the front edges of her sweater here. She says, I love my sweater, but I would like to know any tips for finishing the top corner edges more evenly since they are center front. One side has a nice 90-degree angle, and the other side, the final stitch of the sweater, is more rounded. Is there a finishing technique that can help with this to make them both 90 degrees? So I think it's a little bit tricky to see because I'm not sure if it's just sort of the angle of the photo. But yes, I can see that this one looks nice and even here. I think that the funny thing is because I knit this sweater too, and I was looking to see if I could find my picture to see if I had the same issue. And so I tried to zoom in here as well. So there's this edge here that seems to be kind of 90 degrees. And then this edge, I didn't have a great shot of that. But the idea, I think, would be that for this small section here, um, I wonder if it's like the number of stitches that's picked up because this seems to be like a pearl, whereas these ones are the knit stitches of the ribbing. And so this being a pearl might sort of cause this little bit to stick out a little bit more. So it might be just about tightening that up, or it might be about maybe not even having that pearl edge. But I don't feel like that's something that you want to go back and unpick and redo, because then you would have to redo this entire side, or you'd have to rip back and then remove all of that. So I'm not sure if this is where the tail edge of your yarn has been sort of woven in, but maybe we can jump on a call and everybody can look at that a little bit. So we could do that sort of on a call, maybe, Lauren, so we could see like a little bit better view of what that side looks like. But I kind of also feel like with my sweater, I might have just um, really wet blocked it and maybe steamed that section so that it would lie flat a little bit more. Um, and That's kind of how I made that happen. But I'll have to check my actual real sweater and see what that looks like as well. But yeah, it's kind of tricky. It's a funny way of making that join, I found as well, because this neckband here kind of pulls in a little bit, and so it does make that top section a little bit wonky. But yeah, we can look at that together. Now, let's go and look at all of the things that you guys have made. There's been lots. So I had to sort of do my best here. So let's see what you guys have made. The first thing is, like I mentioned, the ice dyeing. So the course just came out a couple of weeks ago, and Kimona has already taken the technique, and she says, I've been ice dyeing for a while and I love it. I can't wait to learn some new things. And so this is a photo of her ice dyeing her yarn. So you can see her ice in the tray. And then you can see after all the ice is melted, you can see how the dye has sort of laid onto the yarn. And then I do encourage you to check out the link because she's actually taken that yarn and cranked it into socks already. And so they look fantastic. Her socks are so cute. And she's been doing a lot of CSM knitting with the Erlbacher machine this past year or so. But yeah, you could take that yarn and do anything with it. So you can see how nicely it lays in the tray. You don't have to touch it. So you can think if you're going to like wind a bunch of long warps and then put them in a tray and ice dye them, you don't really run the risk of getting them too tangled because you're not touching them. They're not going anywhere. So that would be really, really fun. This, we like to celebrate everybody's first handspun. And so this one, very, very excited. This is Timia's first handspun. She says, I finished plying for the first time and made 18 grams of yarn. And I made it into two singles, one made on my drop spindle and then the other made on my supported spindle. And then I plied onto my drop spindle. It says, I am so pleased with myself. This is a real achievement, even if it is far from good and all thick and thin. Absolutely, it is an achievement. Your first ever yarn, and to have that plied is so very exciting. And I love the fact that you started with the drop spindle and then also with a supported spindle. So you're learning all of these different skills and techniques already and learning how to draft and everything. Like it is absolutely a real and huge achievement to get started with spinning. So congratulations on that. We also have another first hand spun by Ali Lago. She says, I just got an Ashford Kiwi 3 and started watching several classes. Spinning from scratch really helped me understand the basics and practicing paying attention to what I'm doing. Currently, I'm watching the spinning clinic, and that's giving me many new things to try as well. And so she said, this is the homework from spinning from scratch. So, spinning from scratch is the class that I taught at the very, very beginning. This is how I taught. Brand new spinners in person when I was teaching in person classes. And so you'd come and we would sort of like treadle the wheel with not touching anything, but just letting the wheel, treadle so that you get a feel for how it feels. And then practice drafting the wool, pre drafting. How does that feel before you try to combine all of the movements together? It's quite overwhelming if you're trying to draft and pull and manage fiber at the same time as you're managing your feet and trying to see what you're looking at. It's a lot. So I break it down into all these different steps of wheel spinning. And then there is the spinning clinic is one that is also taught by Kim McKenna. And so in the spinning clinic, if you see that one, Kim is working with 3 different spinners. One spinner who's like brand new, one spinner who's been spinning for about a year, and one spinner who's been spinning for like 6 or 7 years. Charlotte was the 6 or 7 year spinner. And so for each of these different spinners at different levels of skill development, Kim is giving advice and guidance and feedback and all sorts of things like that. So I encourage you guys to check that one out as well. But this is first handspun from Ali. Very, very nice. Congratulations. And thank you so much for sharing that. It's inspiring, I hope, to people to see that you can get started with spinning. Everybody, you can do it. You can do it. Now, this is by Katherine Steelely. Katherine always shares really beautiful color and just inspired projects. Like every time you look at her projects, you're just like inspired by the color combinations. And so she was saying that during the summer of 2022, she made a bunch of roll eggs with her blending board, a bunch of fiber and mix-ins. And she says, my daughters and I took turns making roll eggs. And then because of the fiber prep February that we were doing, sort of like making roll eggs and sharing them and things like that, Katherine said that she's returned to these roll eggs. She was inspired to return to the roll eggs. And so no specific plans on what I'm making, but we'll see how things unfold. So that very, very excited to see all these really beautiful roll eggs and what they might transform into. They are so pretty. Roll egg photos are the best. Thank you. Now, we have another one here. This is from Leanne. Leanne has been working on the Hug and a Mug Targi fiber. So Hug and a Mug was a colorway that we did for December Fiber Club. So it's our secret stash club. And it was done on the Targi fibers, a really super bouncy, fluffy, light fiber. And so she's saying that it was very smooth and drafted very easily. I could have spun them even finer because the Targi drafts so well without falling apart and seems to handle a lot of twist. And so she has here about over 1,000 yards of 2-ply yarn. So it was lace weight yarn spun from this Targi. It's so, if you go to the thread here, her yarn looks so fluffy and so airy, so beautiful. Really, really lovely. So I'm sure that it's going to make something really nice. I believe Leanne is knitting it up. And so, yes, she says there are 2 skeins. And so she's going to work both of those together. Yeah, gorgeous. Can't wait to see what it becomes. But that's really, really lovely. So if you haven't tried Targi, Targi is another sheep breed that has a really interesting texture to it and is fun to spin and makes poofy, bouncy, springy yarn. Really lovely. Now, this is a project that was shared by Kathy. Kathy said, I first learned about fractal spinning from a class Felicia gave on Craftsy, and that led me to the School of SweetGeorgia, where I'm loving all the new things I'm learning, including more about fractal spinning. I only learned to spin last summer, so I'm still a newbie, but I'm thrilled with what I'm already able to make. So here she's made a shawl of her own design with the fractal spun yarn, and she says, now it is my favorite shawl. The fiber for this project is Polworth, and it was bought from an independent dyer on Etsy. So she said, I used 2 braids, which were predominantly shades of blue with some cream, beige, and brown colors at the end. And she split out the blues and fractal spun those. And then she fractal spun the beige into a separate skein and used all the blue for the main body and then used the lace with the beige. She says, I was nervous about playing yarn chicken with my own yarn, so I didn't push it with the lace design. She's also included beads as well. So you have to go and look at the forum post so you can see the up close photo of the lace section. And there's some beads incorporated into all of that. But I think it's amazing and it's beautiful. And I love the fact that, Kathy, you designed your own shawl and it's gorgeous. It's just a really beautiful way to show off that color that you've created in the fractal spun yarn. Really, really love it. Love, love, love it. Beautiful. Now, this one is by Andrea. Andrea is a new member who's just joined the school. So, welcome to Andrea. And she says that this is a cushion, a little pillow that she's just finished, and she says, "I'm considering it a huge win." She had a number of challenges. Basically, she found a summer and winter draft online that she wanted to weave, but um, she she had a lot of things that she said that she needed to learn, and so there was issues with the threading, and then she forgot to add the tabby and things like that, and so there was just a lot of challenges and lots of things that she's learned along the way. But what I found so awesome about this is that she found a way to still to learn and then salvage everything that she had done in order to end up with a project. So, like if you look at the thread, you'll see that there's actually on the inside of this fabric, there's a number of floats, right? There's lots and lots of floats, but she's kind of hidden all of those long floats on the inside of the pillow so they're not going to snag or anything like that. And in fact, she's made this very, very practical fabric here from the draft that she had. So, I hope that this doesn't turn you off of weaving, Andrea. I hope that this is just the beginning. I think that we've all had challenges like this before, where we're going through like problems with threading errors, or warp issues or tension issues or whatever it might be, and still get to the end of this, and then hopefully you still feel like, okay, I've learned something out of this. I'm excited to try another project. So yes, I would love to see what you make next with weaving and everything. So excited to have you join us here as well. Thanks for being here, Andrea. Wanted to quickly share this one with you. This is by Lauren. Lauren recently crocheted the Coast to Color crochet shawl. This is the granny triangle shawl that Charlotte wrote the pattern for. And we've actually seen a number of them show up in the SOS forums. So thank you guys so much for making those. I hope the instructions were really clear. We made some videos about how to work the edges and how to make this design in the first place. But yeah, I think it's really, really great. I think it's a great way to use up yarn that you have, great way to use up any sort of multi-colors, mini skeins, all sorts of things like that. And so this is just one of the Coast to Color shawls that we've seen in the school. So congratulations on finishing that. It looks really great. This is the full picture of Lauren's throwback sweater. I wanted to share this because we want to celebrate the fact that this yoke, the colors that are in the yoke, are actually Lauren's handspun. So she says she has here the yoke uses handspun in cream, which is alpaca yarn here for the white color, and then the colored yarn is the Trail Runner colorway that we dye at Sweet Georgia in Cordale. And so, yeah, she says there's a 3-ply combo plied yarn in Trail Runner, salted caramel, and tapestry blended together to make these. This looks fabulous. I love seeing handspun in knitted fabric. Love it. I love that it's worked into the yoke. It's so pretty. It looks great. And then the main body colorway is the mink colorway. And yeah, I think it looks fantastic. I like this sweater, and I really like the yoke design. It was a really tricky thing to knit because I do remember having to hold 3, like you have to, it was stranded color work with 3 different strands at the same time. And yeah, it was a bit tricky to knit, but I think I would knit it again. I would knit the throw over. Is that what it's called? The pullover version of the same design. I thought it was actually quite nice, and it's nice to wear. I do wear it around the house. I like it. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that one. And then we have also Margaret. Meg is in the chat with us today as well. And these are some socks that she recently shared. So Margaret just recently got a CSM, a circular sock knitting machine. I believe she got this just around Christmas time because she was showing some of the gnomes that she had been cranking on the machine. And so she's learning some new techniques here. She says she's trying to make the taco fold headband. I made that one a couple of months ago as well. I shared that in, I think, a video. And then she said she cranked the tube too short by mistake. And so instead of ripping it out, she cranked another tube the same length and then made them into afterthought socks. And then she says, of course, I made more gnomes as well. And so since that time, she has actually mastered how to knit heels and complete socks. And so she'll post about those. But the afterthought socks, you can find out information on her website here, yarnsfromthelake.com. Um, so this is absolutely a fantastic way to use up lots and lots of yarn that you have. If you are using a CSM and you're not comfortable yet with learning how to do heels and toes and going back and forth on the machine and you want to just crank, absolutely. You can take these cranked tubes and then make them into afterthought socks. Yes. Yes, working on the river now. Fantastic. And so I don't know if Meg, if you, I know you did the heels as afterthought heels. Here you can see the heels here that are kind of like cut into the tube of fabric. But the cuffs and the toes, I'm guessing you also worked those by hand. I'm guessing. But you can read that post to find out more. And so there's a whole gallery of photos on the school forums where you can find all of Meg's socks and CSM projects. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love to see all this progress on the CSM. Very exciting. We have here by Suzanne a double weave blanket. And so Suzanne's just finished weaving this double weave blanket. It is in twill. It is really lovely. It's beautiful. She says, I've just finished fixing the weaving blips on my double weave blanket. What are the best options for fringe? Simple knots, 2x2. Does Damascus edge only work? So basically, Suzanne did not want to have a fringe. I think that she said in her forum post that she didn't really like fringe. So, or what are different ways to finish the blanket if she didn't want to do fringe? So, yes, in some of the blankets that I've done, I've tied like groups of knots and then trimmed it. You can trim it long, you can trim it short. You could do twisted fringe, you could do braided fringe. Damascus edge is something like where Jana shows this in her tapestry weaving projects where you take all of the warp ends and you basically hide them into the cloth. But I don't think that that would be necessarily suitable for the blanket. I do think that if you don't want any fringe at all, I would go with a binding. I would almost use like a separate fabric binding and bind over top of it. Or you could do something like a blanket, like almost hem it a little bit. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. um, you could use like you could hem it under, uh, or you could use a blanket stitch, like contrasting color and a blanket stitch to cover over that edge so that it doesn't fray. But those are just some of the ways that you could finish a big blanket like that. It's really, really lovely. Yeah, fringe is not for everybody. I think that I had read before that if you're making baby blankets, that fringe is a big no-no. You can't have fringe for baby blankets. So, because the babies might chew the fringe, they can get their hands tangled in the fringe, so all sorts of things like that. So, if it was meant for kids or something like that, then you would want to use binding or a hem on a blanket. That's really lovely. Congrats. This is a crook rag pattern that has been finished by Joyce. So Joyce said that first she had started Debbie's class on Zoom through the Yarn Barn of Kansas. And then I guess she had some challenges getting started. She said she dropped the cross when she started to warp, and then she needed a third hand to make a third shed work on the flip loom, and so she had to take a break for a little bit. But now she's got back into it, and she used the class that Debbie taught for the School of Sweet Georgia on crook rag weaving, and she finally finished the project. And so this was done on a rigid heddle loom, the flip loom. So Debbie's class teaches crook rag, and it is a 3-point twill. So it uses 3 shafts, and you can do this on a multi-shaft loom, or you could do it on a rigid heddle loom. You could also do it on a 4-shaft loom. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, but Debbie does show a process for using rigid heddle loom to weave crook rag. So if you are interested in this style of weaving, this style of project, I do encourage you to check out Debbie's class. It is awesome. And the crook rag just looks amazing. I was obsessed with it for a long time, and I love weaving it. it is takes a bit of time, takes extra time to weave it, because the sort of the premise of croak brag is that in order to make any one of those lines of design, it's actually 3 weft picks. So it's 3 weft picks mashed together until they look like one line of weft. So you basically have to weave 3 times as much in order to get 1/3 of the fabric. So it does take longer, but I feel like the results are incredible. So yes, amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Joyce. Thank you. We have another project here by Katherine. And so I tried to go in order. I start like with dyeing, and then I'll go to spinning, then I go to knitting, and then I'll end with weaving. And so these towel projects were inspired by a pattern and a kit advertised through the Jane Stafford Textiles. And so Catherine said that since the pattern was only available with the kit, but she already had lots of 8-2 cotton already in her stash, she decided to draft her own pattern. So she created an undulating twill pattern with the help of handweaving.net, and then she says that her version alternates the direction of the undulating twill stripes and introduces some color variation into each of the warp stripes. So the red stripes are a combination of both cherry and raspberry yarns, and then the white stripes are a mix of white and light gray, and the green stripes are medium green with a single thread of lime. So using all of these colors, and then there's more and more optical mixing happening because those stripes that look like they're red are not just red. Um, and then she used cherry, raspberry, white, and gray for weft, and then on a whim decided to try out the lime. So again, this is all actually very interesting because they are also ideas that we share in the optical mixing class for hand woven color. So we have a class where we weave these radiant towels, and the idea is like you have one warp and then you weave with different colored wefts, and every different color weft that you use produces a completely different color overall. Your each towel is going to look totally different because of the color mixing and blending that happens. And so the same thing is happening here. So Catherine can put on a warp with all of these different colors. And then when you're using different weft colors for each towel looks completely different. So you have like the one that was woven with white weft, and then you have the one that's woven with red, and this one is gray, and this one was lime, and then this one is raspberry. Very, very interesting. But now she says that they're all done and they're hemmed, and then she has them ready to share for the 2025 holiday season. So again, if you want to make things for holiday, now is a good time to start. Thank you, Catherine. It's always, always such a joy to see the things that you've made. And these are the final 2 slides. Now, these are very, very interesting because these are a set of tea towels that have been designed and woven by Kathy in the forums. And she said that the colors of her towels were inspired by the colors of the spinning color collaboration that we did called Winter Inspirations. So basically, what we did is over the holidays, we worked with each one of our spinning instructors to design a colorway. So each instructor has their own colorway that they designed and created. And these colorways we put out, calling them color collab. And Kathy has taken each one of these colorways and woven a different towel based on the colors in that colorway. So this one here is the one that is called Shadows in the Snow. Yes, this is the Shadows in the Snow colorway. And you can see it's really, really lovely pattern here. You can see the color gradation in the towel. So basically, she took 8-2 cotton and matched it up with the colors in the fiber. Really, really lovely. Yes, I've been enjoying the thread for these towels. It's gorgeous. So if you check out this thread, there's more than just this one. This is one of them, and this is a second one, but there's more. There's more towels. They're absolutely gorgeous. And then this one is based on the Winter Skies colorway here. And the towels are very different in terms of weave structure. This one is a twill, it looks like. Yeah, just looks like a tutu twill plaid tartan kind of style. But the colors have been pulled out of the fiber. So there's lots of different places that you can find color inspiration for any of your projects. You can look at a thing of fiber, and even if you don't spin, you could take that fiber and use those colors for a project that ends up in weaving, or a project that ends up in knitting or crochet or whatever. So I feel like inspiration is everywhere. You just kind of are looking and collecting and all these kinds of things. So yeah, I do encourage you guys to check out that one as well. So, thank you to everybody for sharing all of the projects that you've been working on, sharing all of your inspiration. I think that I say this every month, but it's true that you just don't really realize whose lives you are touching each time you share something that you've created. You think, oh, I'm making these towels and they're on my loom, and you snap a photo and you share that with people, and then you don't realize that that might spark the interest and the spark somebody else's creativity to create something else too. So it's just this ripple effect of all the people that you can influence and share with just by sharing what you're working on. So thank you so much for always coming, you know week after week, and sharing the things that you're working on. So thank you guys so much for being here again. We're excited to do this again next month. End of May, we'll chat more and hopefully have more projects to share with you guys. So thank you so much for being a part of the school. All Whether you're new here or is your first time coming to this live stream, or if you've been with us for years, thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys in the next one next month. All right, bye. And in the meantime, I'll see you on the forums. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.